The conflict between Israel and Iran continues to escalate as the two sides continue to strike each other with a flurry of missiles. My colleague Diksha Bisla getting you the latest at this hour. Over to you, Diksha.
Thanks, Molly. And now let's get to it. Now, for the fourth consecutive day, Israel and Iran have been locked in a fierce missile exchange. And despite growing calls for restraint, the war escalates. Now, let's take a look at the top developments at this hour. Israel's military says a missile launched from Yemen had fallen before entering Israeli territory after sirens sounded in several areas of the country. Death toll from Iranian missile attacks in Israel has mounted to 24. The country has not yet given a precise location for the attack, but has talked about rescue operations at two places. Now, Iran says it has successfully struck Israel with a salvo of missiles. Iran has vowed to carry out more devastating operations against Israeli targets, and Iran's Revolutionary Guards said in a statement that the operation against the vital targets in Israel will continue until its complete destruction. Well, the United States ambassador to Israel has said that the U.S. embassy in Tel Aviv has taken a minor hit from Iranian missiles. In a post on X, Mike Huckabee has said that U.S. embassy and consulate in Tel Aviv will remain closed today after some minor damage from concussions of Iranian missile hits. Now, emergency responders are on the site of attack in Tel Aviv as they battle multiple fires and damage to buildings. At least 12 people have been injured in the attack. Well, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has warned that residents of Tehran will pay the price for the attacks on civilians in Israel. In a post on X, Katz accused Iran of deliberately targeting civilians in Israel and added that residents in Tehran will pay the price very soon. Now, some time back, Israel's military had claimed that it has struck command centers in Tehran belonging to Iran's Quds force, with a precise direction from the Intelligence Directorate. It says the targets were located in the Iranian capital, and that's everything we know so far. Back to you, Molly.
Thanks for that, Diksha. As we continue to keep a close eye on the developments and the latest coming in, let's also go straight across to Amit Stein from Jerusalem, just to get a better sense of what is happening at this point. Thanks very much for being here. I have to begin by asking you to get us up to speed with the latest at this point, what you're picking up and what things are looking like.
So we're probably going to see today a lot of activity in Tehran. We saw what your colleague said before, that the Israeli Defense Minister said that the residents of Iran will suffer because of the leader. Now, let me just explain this phrase. It's not the best phrase to choose, but what we're going to see probably in the next couple of hours, it's called a Beirut model, meaning Israel gives an alert to a neighborhood or an area in Tehran, like Israel did back then in Beirut, saying, listen guys, there's A, B, C, D buildings over there, we are going to strike them. We're giving you an advance notice so you can evacuate the area, and then Israel in a few hours struck the building. It's supposed to be government buildings, army buildings. That's what we saw in Beirut, and we're going to see the same thing probably in Tehran in the next few hours. Now, the idea is not only to strike these targets, which are important targets to strike. The idea is at the end to cause panic, turmoil in Tehran, in Iran, that will influence the leadership to stop these rocket firing against civilian areas, and maybe even to agree to some kind of a deal like Trump offered them back then, which is zero enrichment. So that's the idea of what we'll see in the next couple of hours in Tehran.
All right, so you're saying that in a way that's the end game here on part of Israel, but do you really see that happening, A? And B, where do you see things heading? Because at this point, both sides are maintaining that they are not going to be backing down.
Yeah, both sides are claiming that, but we're seeing already the panic in Tehran. We're seeing people fleeing out of the city. And maybe, just maybe, this pressure from the people itself, from the public itself, will pressure the Iranian leadership. You need to remember, Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei ordered specific strikes on civilian areas. They're not looking for military areas or military infrastructure. It's a specific instruction by the Supreme Leader of Iran to fire at the residential areas. That's why we're seeing the focus of firing at central Israel, which is a very heavily populated area, and to the north, to Haifa area. And so you need to remember always it's a direct order. Now, we're trying to sum up this war and ask, has things changed? Both sides, like you say, have the same stance, but we're less than 4 days from the beginning of the war. The expectation, for example, in Israel, I'll tell you, that Israel will achieve air supremacy in Tehran only by Wednesday or Thursday. Israel has already yesterday achieved air supremacy in Tehran and attacked the city in broad daylight. That shows you that things are going fast regarding the achievements on Israel. Now, there's tragic events here in Israel when you see 24 citizens being killed by rockets, by missiles since the beginning of the war. But right now, Israel's plan is moving even ahead of schedule when it comes to the targets being attacked.
All right. You did briefly touch upon what you have told us about what's happening on the ground. But if you can just lay out for our viewers, since you are in Jerusalem, what the impact of the Iranian strikes has been like in different parts of Israel and what the aftermath has looked like.
So you don't hear that right now, but I'm with 4 kids at home, okay? Each home in Israel has, let's say, not each home, but each building or each house has at least a room which is shelter. Some have a shelter as a room. Some have, in buildings, if they are not you, they have an underneath shelter. So a lot of people go to sleep in these kinds of shelters. For example, I sleep at night in this shelter with my kids and wife. Okay, you don't want to wake up for every alarm. And these shelters are supposed to be protected when it comes to these rockets with missiles fired from Iran. Now, there's no work, there's no school. Only essential workers go. Shops, grocery shops are open. Fuel stations are open. But mainly the people are at home. The kids do not have kindergartens or schools. And this is how Israelis have been living for the last 4 days. Again, the expectation is it will take more time. I don't know to tell you for how long this is going to take. But right now, Israel is in a standstill. And, up until yesterday, for example, we thought the rocket launches are only at night because there's a specific process that can be much more easily done at night. But yesterday, we had rockets being fired also during daylight. So it changes this perspective. But, that's life in Israel right now. I yesterday, for example, drove through Jerusalem. There was an alarm. I knocked on one of the doors, complete stranger, and asked him to go into the shelter. This is the life of Israelis these days because of these massive rockets, which we're talking about more than 1,000 kilos. But life here, I'd say, are going on. We are almost into 2 years of war. We've been used to it, so Israel is in the mood to it, and hopefully it will end soon.
You're talking about what it's been like inside the homes and as the shelters are concerned. But, we've seen a lot of that aftermath on the streets as well. So what does that look like? You're saying life does partially go on as usual, but how exactly are the people seeking shelter on the streets? Also, a quick comment on Israel asking UK, France for interceptors as well to handle the Iranian missiles.
I don't think it's interceptions, but it's not interceptors, but interception, because we saw back then in the Iranian strikes during the April and the October, when Iran fired Israel 300 rockets, then also there was some kind of coalition that assisted Israel. Some countries joined, some other countries didn't join, but the main countries working now with Israel to intercept these rockets, or the US. They are not joining physically the war, but they are assisting Israel in intercepting these rockets. So this is a big help, and they're also been exporting planes to Israel for munitions in recent weeks. So the story right now, you say, yeah, you see the pictures on the street. I agree with you. It's not a heaven. We don't have flights in Israel, for example. The airspace is completely closed. But at the end, it's awful to say, but yes, there are 24 people killed, but the assumptions were much more. Do you want to hear the numbers? The assumptions in Israel's security cabinet was that there will be between 800 and 1,400 Israeli killed, okay, in the beginning of the Iranian strikes, because the assumption was that 600, 700 ballistic missiles will be launched. So Israel has a huge success. Each casualty is a complete world, is a huge loss. But, you know, Israelis are trying to understand, yes, unfortunately, there's no 100% when it comes to interception, although Israel is the most, you know, sophisticated countries when it comes to these kinds of things, but it's much less than expected. And you know, some of those killed, for example, didn't follow the instruction, weren't in shelters or things like that. If they would have done it, probably the number of casualties would have been less.